I did. Pittsburgh Steelers fans, what's going on? This is Jeff Hartman of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. It is time for another Steelers preview podcast, and when you accidentally hit go live before you're ready to go live and every that stuff, it happens, and here we are, live on YouTube and simulcast on Facebook. Welcome to the show. Joining me as always, Brian Davis. What's up, Brian?
Hey, I am here. I'm glad. I don't care what the record is. Well, I care what the record is, but I see great stuff on the horizon, so I'm pumped.
All right, Dave Schofield. What's up, Dave?
Oh, I'm doing all right. I'm ready to go. This is an exciting and new era that we have coming on here. I know Jeff's excited, right? This,
indeed.
To what ushering in. Well, I don't know if he's all that excited. Brian, you weren't there with Jeff whenever I got to share the news with him that one Kenneth Shane Pickett. Pickett. I don't want to call him Pickens like that. That's left for bad language. Sorry, I couldn't help it. When we found out that there was a chance he was coming in, there was a report, it was coming out. Wouldn't you have loved to have known Jeff's reaction, Brian?
Well, I think you kind of alluded to it on the post-game show. I
don't know if you know this, but I actually caught Jeff's reaction. And I said, I said they're going to take a shot with Pickett. They're going to do it in the second half. You know what Jeff had to say? Listen up.
Oh my gosh! Don't take Kenny Pickett.
Don't
take Kenny Pickett. You shut the front door. Oh gosh.
That was Jeff's reaction to. Oh wait, that was Jeff's reaction to them drafting Kenny Pickett. I'm sorry, I just couldn't help it.
Do you need more work to do or something, Dave? Like, how do you have time to go back and look at this stuff? I mean,
dude, that took me 3 minutes.
You did that on the your Scobro show too. I heard you go back and listen to that. My reaction was I was nervous. I was really nervous. I said that on my Let's Ride podcast because I put myself out there, obviously, as saying that I think Kenny Pickett should have been starting since week 1. And you don't want to come off like an absolute clown. So you hope he plays well. Like I'm going to call a spade and say, I hope that he played well, not just for the Steelers' sake, but for the sake that on this show and on other shows that we've done, I've definitely vouched for Kenny Pickett to be the guy. And so this kind of is a good segue into the first topic I wanted to ask you all about. You know, Matt Canada on Thursday, the coordinator speaks to the media, and Matt Canada he's like Mike Tomlin 2.0 in regards to speaking with the media. He says everything while saying nothing. And I mean, absolutely nothing. And he doesn't give reporters much of anything. But one thing that he said I wanted to get Charles' take on was that the offense in Matt Canada's perspective is not going to look too different this Sunday. He said he's pretty much the same thing. He said, obviously, you didn't see too much different in the second half. I might disagree, but I wanted to get your all's take. Brian, are you expecting anything different? And if so, what would that be?
I just think that there's going to be pretty much the same thing going on, but with more attention to the strengths of Kenny Pickett. I could actually see more of a focus on the run game this week to kind of take a little weight off of his shoulders. But I think once you start seeing what Kenny Pickett can do, he'll get trusted more and more. It's 2004 in a way, because when Ben Roethlisberger came in, if you look at the stats week to week with Ben Roethlisberger, they're nothing that says franchise quarterback. They're pedestrian numbers, but it was set up that way. But what wasn't pedestrian was the fact that they won. So they set up a system to make sure that Ben Roethlisberger could win. Of course, he had a different team around him than what Kenny Pickett's going to have around him. He had more of a Super Bowl ready team. However, that's a team that came off of a 5-11 year, and they did some growing. This is a team that could go ahead and put something nice together if Kenny could help elevate the rest of this team.
Dave, what say you about the offense in regards to, are you expecting anything different? And if so, what would that be?
I expect different outcomes. I expect different production. I expect different execution. I don't expect a wholesale change in philosophy. And that's what I think Coach Canada was talking about. It's not like you're going from Joe Flacco to Lamar Jackson. It's not where you're changing up your whole philosophy of everything else. I don't think that there are plays that only were for Pickett or only was for Trubisky. I think they just had their offensive scheme. There are going to be ones that each, like Coach Tomlin said, each one of them will be more comfortable with. So it's not like they're coming out and changing everything because of the quarterback, which isn't what you wanted to do in the first place. But what's going to be different about the offense? And that's what people I'd say, oh no, what's he talking about? It was definitely different. The production was different. I didn't feel like it looked like a completely different scheme coming from the Steelers in the second half. I just saw, tweaked, but I saw completely different execution.
Yeah, there were definitely, I don't think the offense and its structure is going to change too much. I do think that the play calling was different in the second half. You saw a coordinator that was comfortable with a quarterback who was comfortable in the pocket and not having to move them out on the, If you think about Mitch Trubisky's last 2.5 games, it was constantly, they were trying to cut the field in half, getting him out of the pocket, getting him on the run, which is where he excelled. I don't blame them for doing that. Pickett is more of I can stay in the pocket. He can do the other stuff too. Dave, what do you want to say?
Oh, I was going to say, it wasn't like Matt Canada put away his Mitch Trubisky play sheet paper and pulled out his Kenny Pickett one. It was the same paper, but the plays that he could do, and you could say, oh, let's do this one. That could be different.
Yeah, so I think you will see it'll be a little bit different. I think the play calling will be a little bit different. I think that, you're going to see an offense. People might watch it and say, wow, that was vastly different. When in reality, like Dave said, there's plays that Kenny Pickett likes. Matt Canada did talk about how there's route combinations that he prefers over Trubisky. So this means it works. It works. We'll see how it goes. I want to ask you all the question, which is the title of the podcast. It's about moral victories. So the Steelers find themselves in a really tough spot this week. Everyone knows that. Going to Buffalo is difficult in and of itself, but when you have the high-powered Bills, they're probably one of the top-ranked offenses, the top overall defense, I believe. They're at least top 3 in almost every major statistical category. And
third offense, first defense.
There you go. So
when you look at yardage, which is what everyone goes by.
AKA they're good. All right. So it's a situation where a lot of fans have said, well, if the Steelers go up to Buffalo and they hang in there and they make it close until the end, that's a win in their book. Brian, do you believe that the Steelers do the moral victory thing, or is that just a fan thing?
That's a fan thing. And as far as I'm concerned, moral victories are for school children and our youth under 18. That's where the moral victories need to come, to build them up. When you get to the NFL and you say, oh, we hung with the Buffalo Bills. No, beat the Buffalo Bills. You're professionals. And this is not the bad news bears. This isn't a team that is incapable of the Bills. I know it's 14 points, but come on. This team is definitely capable of doing it. They did it last year. Sure, slightly different situation, but they've done it. This Buffalo Bills team almost lost 2 weeks in a row. They did, and I'm thrilled that they beat Baltimore, not because it was beating Baltimore, because I didn't want them to come in with a 2-game losing streak, but this team's failable. So no, there's no moral victory here. You go ahead and sure, if you're sowing the seeds for later, but that still goes into your loss column, and that affects paychecks, that affects playing time. No, you've got to go and do everything you can to win and not say, oh, all right, we're making strides, we're getting closer. No, BS.
Dave, what are your thoughts on moral victories?
As you asked him if it was for the team or for the fans, it is for the fans, because how I say, you only feel as good moving forward as your last game. So it is possible to feel better about the team going forward with the Steelers not winning the game as a fan, but that's where it ends. There is no column win, lose, tie, moral victory. That there's no column there when it comes to the team's record. So you've got to go out there, you got to win. But what's different, and it's not a moral victory, but what is different is after every game, you break it down and you learn from mistakes and you build on things that you did well. You can still have things that you did well and you can build on those things in a game that you lose, especially against a good opponent. That's not a moral victory. That's just something to build your team for the future. But it's not like, oh, look, they did great, they lost, but okay. The fans can feel that way, but the team, it's win or lose, because that's what ultimately it comes down to.
Yeah, it's a fan analyst thing. And to me, moral victory and you could say gleaning positives from a losing effort, they're the same thing. They're the same thing. A moral victory is just in terminology the same as, well, the Steelers lost, but like Dave just said and alluded to, they did this, this, and this really well. And maybe that's something they can build upon for future weeks. Like you said, players, coaches, now you either win or you lose. For fans, analysts, media members, they're the ones that can always kind of try to draw stuff out of a loss. So I feel like it's pretty much the same, but I don't think the Steelers do moral victories. Brian, what do you think? Go ahead.
No, I don't think they do, but you might be hearing me do that exact same thing, and because it's our job to give you a reason to come back next week if they do lose. So, moral victories are a tool that sometimes like the media or the fans use, and I'm not going to say that I'm not going to do it, because I need you to come back next week and watch the Steelers and maybe download a podcast.
Well, no, the thing is for us, and I say us as in fans, us as in pseudo media, there's going to be a lot to talk about this team for 17 games. It's not, especially with Kenny in the lineup now. When Kenny Pickett was named the starter, and barring injury, I don't foresee that changing. There's a lot on the line for the team this season and their future. So I think that the really diehard fan, they're not going to miss anything for anything. It doesn't matter. Now, there are those fans that'll say, 1-3, I'm checking out. Let me know if they start winning again. And I feel like those fans, at least for those of us at Behind the Steel Curtain that do podcasts and are in the live chat and see all these people in the same names every single week, even in the off season, they're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
But no, point well taken, Brian. Point well taken.
Can I, because here's my question to you, Jeff.
Sure.
Moral victories it's an ambiguous term. You can define it any way you want. But for example, in this game coming up, is it possible for the Steelers to lose the game and you still have more winners than losers in your winners and losers column?
Yeah, it is.
That's the question.
Not
you know
more,
what I mean?
Not more. No.
Yeah.
It could be even. It could be split.
Yeah.
It could be like 5-5.
Yeah.
But I don't think it would ever be more in a losing effort. But Dave, you coached.
Yeah.
When I coached the game, we went up against teams that were the equivalent of Steelers Bills on paper.
Yeah.
And there were times where we almost pulled out the win. And as a coach, I said to my team afterwards, yeah, we lost and that sucks. But you know what? There's a lot to like about that performance that we just put on the field. I think that there is something there. And people, like I said, the moral victory is just in terminology. The Steelers could grow from a win or from a loss even. They could see some things that worked well, and they could build off of that. I'm not trying to excuse a loss by any stretch of the imagination. I just feel like it is possible to glean positives from a performance, even if it is in a losing effort. So, Brian, anything to add to that before we move on? He's not the best color man in the league for nothing. All right. Let's you know what? Dave's going to be talking for about 20 minutes here.
I was going to say, if we did the injury report, we might as well go to bed, because that'll take up the rest of the show.
Seriously, my Let's Ride podcast, I think the first half was 40 minutes, and 20 of it was the Bills injury report. I'm joking. It's a little bit of an exaggeration, but it is lengthy. Dave, why don't you read the injury reports. Just do Thursday.
Okay, yeah, that's all I'm doing. Here's the Steelers. 2 new players added to the injury report that weren't on there the day before. They were both offensive players. It was Deontay Johnson limited with a hip, although after practice he said it was just some soreness and he's fine. And Mason Cole limited with a foot. The 7 players that were on both days were all from the defense. The only player who did not practice on Thursday was Ahkello Witherspoon with a hamstring. Coach Tomlin said we could assume he was unavailable this week anyway. He already said on Tuesday. Yeah. So that's not a surprise. Everyone else was limited. Cam Sutton limited 2 days in a row with a groin/hamstring. Okay, Levi Wallace limited 2 days in a row with a foot. Chris Wormley with an ankle and Cam Hayward with an ankle and elbow limited both days as well. What was the positive was 2 players who didn't practice on Wednesday, Minkah Fitzpatrick with the knee and Terrell Edmunds with a concussion, which I think that was one that if he didn't practice on Thursday was going to be, why even bother? But both of them were limited on Thursday. So once again, we'll see what Friday holds.
Let's do some predictions, Brian. What do you see for game statuses this weekend? Well, let's assume Witherspoon is ruled out. Anyone else you see maybe questionable heading into the weekend?
I think there's going to be a whole lot of questionables, but I would expect most of these guys to play. And just like my answer last week, no Witherspoon. We already know that. And or it's assumed to be that, like Dave just said. So, I think you're going to see a lot of these guys playing through some stuff. I don't think it's anything that's going to keep them off of the field.
Dave, do you agree with that?
Well, you got to see what we have on Friday, not even before you see this game status, but just how much they participate. You could very well see somebody actually end up questionable, which they haven't had all year. The big one to me is, what does Terrell Edmunds have Friday? Can he go to a full participant? Even if he does, he still might be questionable because it might take until Saturday for him to clear the protocol. Because I'm pretty sure it would have to take until Saturday because I think he has to go a full practice and then have no symptoms the next day. So I think if he doesn't have a full practice on Friday, they'll probably get ruled out. If he has a full practice, he'll probably be questionable. And then you'll get a report on Saturday with whether or not he's out of the protocol or not.
Yeah, that you took the words right out of my mouth with Edmunds. Chris Wormley, we'll see what happens with him. Sometimes the Steelers will throw a questionable tag on him. Let's say they wanted to have Isaiah Loudermilk in the lineup, and so they put questionable on Wormley, and then that's why he's not playing, is because the ankle. So I don't know that they've been known to navigate those waters in unique ways. We'll put it that way.
Well, let's just say it this way. Cam Hayward might be in worse shape than Chris Wormley, and I would say Cam Hayward is more likely to play.
Yeah, I would
because agree. Someone who, it's the infamous last year you had both Zach Banner and Devin Bush coming off the knee injuries. Devin Bush at the time, he was still out there because Devin Bush not being himself was still better than everything else they had. Although some people might want to argue that they still didn't have that much else, but Zach Banner wasn't, not all players are equal when it comes to how injured they can play.
Correct. All right. Let's go to the Buffalo side of things. This is going to take a while. Don't read anyone that they just had resting. Just skip over.
Okay, just skip them. Okay. Cornerback Christian Benford, hand, did not play. Did not participate. This is just for Thursday. I don't even have Wednesdays. Wide receiver Jamison Crowder, ankle, did not participate. Wide receiver Gabe Davis, ankle. He was a full participant, but they didn't cross him out. Linebacker Tremaine Edmunds, hamstring, did not practice for the second straight day. Skipping the rest player. Tight end Dawson Knox, foot/hamstring, did not practice. Wide receiver Jake, is that Kumarau? Ankle. Okay, did not practice. Cornerback Cam Lewis, forearm knee. He was a full participant. Wide receiver Isaiah McKenzie, concussion limited. He sounds like that's similar to Edmunds. Von Miller was rest. Center Mitch Morse, elbow, full participant. Offensive lineman Justin Murray, foot limited. Defensive tackle Ed Oliver, ankle limited. Defensive tackle Jordan Phillips, hamstring limited. Safety Jordan Poyer, ribs, did not practice.
Whew. That's a lot. That's a lot. Brian, any names come to mind or pique your interest, so to speak?
Oh, yes, and his name's Edmonds. I think one of the most fantastic players on that defense. Tremaine, brother of Terrell. I think he is, oh my gosh, I think he controls the middle of that defense, and if he is not in that game, that's the equivalent of not having that's the equivalent of the Baltimore Ravens back in the day not having Ray Lewis. And I know that's a very bold statement, but I think he brings it all together for that team. Poyer, I would love to see him in a hoodie in street clothes this weekend because I think he's tough. He always had Ben Roethlisberger's number, but that was Ben Roethlisberger. There's a lot of guys on that list. If you're LPs, I expect you to play. Ed Oliver's a big body in the middle too. That he helps stop the running game, but as far as everything goes, I always look at injury reports as fool's gold because I just read one a couple weeks ago with Myles Garrett and Joel Bitonio on it, and of course they were playing.
That's a good point. Dave, what about you looking at the Buffalo injury report?
Is there anyone left? Oh, no. Brian mentioned Jordan Poyer. Wasn't he the AFC Defensive Player of the Week last week?
Yeah, he had 2 picks last week.
Yeah. That would be, to me, I would say that would be my number one, listing them. And then, of course, Edmonds, and then also tight end Dawson Knox. But I don't think he practiced last week and then he played. So I wouldn't be shocked if everybody on this list ends up playing, unless they're the guys that you don't really know who they are because they're reserve guys and it's not worth it for them to even bother.
Yeah. Now Poyer's the one, and he has a rib injury, and that's tough. I mean, you're a defender, and you think about the amount of contact you're going to be dealing with, and yeah, they might shoot you up and numb it up, but at the same time, it could obviously linger and limit your mobility and things like that. So injuries, unfortunately, on both sides of the team are a big storyline with the Steelers and their defensive side of the ball, and the same with everyone on the 53-man roster for the Bills. So, all right, let's you all ready for a little over-under?
Sure.
Brian, you have your little notepad and ready to scribble down some stuff? Yeah, he's getting it. Brian's been keeping track. If he unmutes himself, we'll see. What's the tally, Brian, of the over-unders this
season? I had a terrible week last week.
Yeah, Jeff, you were still leading, and I think you're leading by 3, and I'm now in second place because of Dave's bad week. But Dave's good at this. So
No, the problem is Jeff. His lines were almost spot on.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah, his lines are insane.
My apologies.
They were almost spot on.
Don't apologize for excellence. I mean, it's the 1 week, Jeff, you got it right on the dot. If we would have said push, which I never say push, if we would have said push, we would have got it right.
I think 1 week Jeff and I said push to something and we did get it right.
Yeah, I think
actually you did do that. Yeah. But no, this has been fun. Yeah, Jeff's leading. This is a long season. One thing that I'm also keeping track of is covering the spread. That's win or lose. If the team covers or the team does, regardless of who you pick, it's if the Steelers cover or if they don't.
Well, I'm going to lose that one. If the Steelers lose, I'm losing because I never pick against the team. So they were supposed to go 17-0 according to when the schedule was released, but that didn't pan out. So, all right, are you all ready to go? Let's get this thing started. There's gonna be a lot of Kenneth Shane Pickett in this one. So KP8 passing yards. All right, yards passing 235.5. That's the number. Brian, over under.
I'm gonna go under.
Okay, that would be right around that. That would be the average for the Bills. Their top ranked pass defense. Dave, what about you?
If you double what he did in the second half last week, it would be 240. Correct. So, but to me, I think it all depends on how you think the game's playing out. If you think that they're going to be behind, they might throw it more. So I'm actually going to go with the over.
I am going to go. I went back and looked at every single quarterback that's gone against Buffalo, and it was weird. Some of these numbers were weird. I'm going to go under, but not by much. I think he eclipses 200, but I'm going to go under. Next one is for Najee Jerome Harris, and Najee Jerome carries. How many carries he has in a game? Not yards, just carries. I have it line at 14.5. Brian, what do you think?
I'm going to go over. It needs to be over. and he's getting better every week. His production's getting better, and I think that they're going to have to still try to get him the ball. Even well, the problem is if they get down real bad real early.
All right, Dave, 14.5.
And that's carries. That's not touches, right?
Touches, carries.
Because there was touches, that would be easier.
Yeah.
I think you picked another good number because of, how is the game going to play out? But you know what? I don't want to lose another spot to Brian, so I'll go over as well.
I was going to go over. I'm thinking more like 15, 16. He hasn't hit 20 yet, though, this entire season, which is really interesting. Maybe he's still a little banged up. We'll see. Let's go to the next, back to Kenneth Shane Pickett, number 8, passing touchdowns in this game. We're setting at 2.5. Brian, what do you think?
I think he's going to get 2. So let me go under.
All right, Dave?
Yeah, I'm going to go under as well with 2.
Over 3. Over with 3.
And just going to pick him to only score 20 points. No.
Oh, no, wait till my prediction. It's
okay. See, I have to come up with my prediction beforehand to make sure all these things fit.
I don't, especially with this prediction. You'll find out. All right, let's go with Pittsburgh Steelers sacks of Josh Allen. 1.5. Brian, what do you think? Buffalo has not given up a lot of sacks this year.
They have
8,
not.
I think.
Same as the Steelers.
Yeah.
I could actually say that I'm going to go over. I'm going to say they get 2. So it's 1.5. So yeah, let's go over, because I have this new rule when it comes to picking over and under. When they're playing a team that has a lot of linemen that on the injury report, I pick under, because they never seem to do that against teams that if you have your 7th string tackle that was just waiting at an Applebee's just last week and he's playing for the opposition, he will stone the Steelers for some reason.
So you said over, right?
Yes.
Okay. Dave, what about you?
You know what? If the Steelers want to have a chance in this game, I think they're going to have to get at least 2. I mean, if they're going to want to try to be in it at the end, that's the thing. If you can be in at the end and see what happens, honestly, my heart's telling me or my gut's telling me 1, but my heart's telling me 2. So I'm going to go over. Go with the heart. Ignore the gut.
This is out of just curiosity, and I'll ask you all this because it reminds me of last season, Week 18 at Baltimore. We all remember Hundley gets the football. We think TJ Watt gets a sack, but they deem it was a run. Am I right? What is that delineation? Do you know how they do that?
That was because he fumbled it.
That's what it was. Okay.
Yeah.
What is the delineation between a designed run, which equates to a tackle for loss, and a sack?
I pretty much they have to say that there was an attempt to throw the ball. So to me, I think it's 3 things. I could be way off on this, but this is the 3 things you look at. Did the lineman go block downfield? Because now they call that for everybody. Did the receivers run passing routes? And did the quarterback with the ball in his hands look downfield towards receivers?
Got it. Okay. With all that being said, I'm going to say over with 2. I think they get 2, and maybe Josh Allen slips and falls and someone touches him. So that might be 1, but it counts. It still counts. All right, let's go to George Pickens. Last week we did George Pickens receiving yards. We're doing it again. Receiving yards for George Pickens, 62.5 is the yardage number there. Brian, over under.
I got to go with the over with George Pickens, and here's the reason why. I think he is the number 1 option for Kenny Pickett. Okay, I'm going to do that a lot. We can over and under that.
Yeah.
Not a number high enough. Yeah. All right, Dave, what do you think? Over under?
I'm going over. You could have gone 82.5 and I'd have gone over.
But
I think that would have been tougher. Well, just after last week, you got to think: is this going to be the connection? But there's a lot of unknowns to say. Hey, is this going to be? Was it the exception or was it the rule? That's what we're going to find out a lot with a lot of stuff this week.
I'm going to say over, but barely. 65 is what I'm thinking. 65. I think he hits pay dirt, but I just don't think he has the 102 yards that he had last week. Then the last one, Deontay Johnson targets. This is something that I've been really thinking a lot about is how is Kenny Pickett entering the lineup impact DJ's targets, because if we listen to Jeffrey Benedict, he told you how with Mitch Trubisky at quarterback, he was on pace to break the touches and targets that he set with Roethlisberger, which is crazy. I have it at 6.5 targets in this game. Brian, over under.
I'm going to go over.
All right. Dave?
Yeah, same here, because before you said the line, I had at least 7 in my mind, so I'll go with that.
I'm going to go over as well with 7. So we all three agree on that one. But there's something about these last two for me. Pickens, yards, and Deontay Johnson targets. I'm wondering if this offense might be what I've always envisioned, and that is kind of pick your poison. Whoever the open guy is going to get the targets, going to get the ball. Whoever has the matchup, we'll see. But that's it for me. Y'all ready for a spread and stuff like that? For some predictions? Dave, you ready?
Sure. Yeah.
Now, before you do that, Dave, I want to read something here. Now, I do an NFL Expert Picks article every week. Typically runs on Friday, behindthesteelcurtain.com. And I found some little interesting nuggets here. This was courtesy of ESPN. Listen to these, and this has to do with the point spread. That's why I'm reading it now. So here's the first nugget. Pittsburgh has not been at least 14-point underdog since 1969. Pittsburgh's the only team since the 70 merger to never be at least a 14-point underdog. Pittsburgh's largest underdog role since the mergers, plus 13.5 against Dallas in Super Bowl 30, where they lost by 10. It's the largest underdog role under Mike Tomlin was 12 points in last year's wildcard game. Next one. Since Mike Tomlin was hired in 2007, Pittsburgh is 44, 25, and 3 against the spread as an underdog, the second best mark in the league in that span. They are 37 and 35 outright, the only team with a winning record in that span. Tomlin is 11 and 2 against the spread, 7 and 6 straight up, as an underdog of at least 3.5 points when Ben Roethlisberger is not the quarterback. And he is 7 and 1 against the spread without Big Ben as at least a 6-point underdog. Josh Allen is 10-4 and 2 against the spread as at least a 7-point favorite, and he is 6-2 and 2 against the spread as a double-digit favorite. Last season, first-round quarterbacks making their first career NFL starts went 0 and 5 against the spread. This is the largest spread so far this season. The previous high was in week 2 when Green Bay covered a 10.5-point spread against the Chicago Bears. So there you go. Some interesting nuggets I wanted to share on the show.
Yeah, I was it this past offseason or sometime on my Stat Geek, I talked about that whole thing that since 2007, the Steelers are the only team with a winning record when they are underdogs.
Yeah, pretty impressive stuff there when you look at that. And those will be in that article if you want to check it out on Friday, if you want to take a closer look at that. So, all right, Dave, what is the current spread? I had seen this earlier today. It was up to 14.5.
It's still 14.5.
Woo, wrong way.
So it's moving in the direction that it will be at least 14. Because remember, these other games that they say they haven't been more that it's not talking about any time. It's what it is at kickoff. That's what it all comes down to. So if things change between now and then, but right now it's at 14.5 with an over under of 46.
All right. Brian, what's your score prediction?
Steelers cover. I will tell you that. I'm definitely taking them to cover. I think the storm's coming. I think when I say the storm of the Steelers, I think they are going to. I still think this is a playoff caliber team. I think it can happen. I just don't know if it's this week. I think it's going to be close, but I'm not sure who to take because I could actually envision me watching this game on Sunday and seeing the Steelers win this game. But there's fear in me. There's fear like, that's way high of a spread. This is not the right time, but screw fear. Let's take the Steelers.
Oh, what's your score?
If they win this game, it's going to have to be by the score of 30-28.
Spicy. Okay. Dave, prediction time.
I tell you what, if I had the opportunity to take 10 or 20 bucks and throw it on the money line, I would definitely go for the Steelers in this one to win outright. Just beat outright.
Heck of a payout.
Because of the payout. It was at plus 800 at one point. Now it's plus 650, but still, that's plus 650. I mean, That's pretty good. So that's what I would do there. This is a big spread. I think that this team has the potential to really get on a roll this year if they can bring it all together with the spark to the offense, get a spark back on the defense in the coming weeks, if you know what I mean. But I'm kind of like Brian, is this week, is it too soon and too good of an opponent otherwise? Because I'll be 100% honest with you. If it's not for the Pittsburgh Steelers, I'm kind of pulling for the Buffalo Bills to win the Super Bowl. I mean, not this week. I want to see him I want to see him get taken down. But if it's not going to be the Steelers, there's just something about this Buffalo team that's also likable, and you can respect this team. I think the Steelers come out in what we would call a moral victory game. I have the final score of 34-29 in favor of the Buffalo Bills. The Steelers go for a 2-point conversion to bring it to 3 and don't get it. And that's why it's the weird 29 score, since Brian likes weird scores in there anyway. But so I think the Steelers score the most points that they have all season. But I just think that which would be great because they're going up against the best defense that they've seen all season. So that would really be something. But I just think that the Bills offense is also too much for the Steelers D right now, especially with a banged up secondary too.
All right. So what was your final score?
34-29.
All right. For me, there's two things in case someone's just tuning into the show for the first time. I said this on my Let's Ride when I did my prediction, but Jeremy Jerome bets as well. There's two things you need to know. Number one, I'm a homer. Number two, I never pick against the Steelers. And number three is I never back down from those first two things I just said. I have picked against the Steelers. It was a long time ago, and it was against New England. Go figure. But I feel like I hearkened back to week 1 of 2021, and I said, damn it, we're picking the same score. Pittsburgh 23, Buffalo 16. Let's go with it.
I thought it was 17.
No, it was 16. 23,
oh, no,
16.
I thought you were picking the score of 23-17 every week until you finally hit it.
That's true. I should have done that. I actually went back and looked at that. That's the only reason I went 16 was because I said, yeah.
See, almost exactly the same.
I can't pick against Pittsburgh because in my mind, like Brian alluded to, I am always envisioning a way for them to win.
Absolutely.
Always. Even when my brain says, Jeff, that's very unlikely to happen, my heart says, but it could.
Well, you have to admit this week, the path to victory is very narrow. It is a very narrow path, but there is still a path to victory.
Yeah.
And that's why we're going to watch, and that's why we're going to wave our towels, and that's why we're going to be ready for 1 o'clock on Sunday. Did I just give my closing thoughts before?
I think you did. You can go ahead and go. Like Brian got to leave early last week.
Hit the music.
We haven't done trivia yet.
I know, but the thing is for me is like with Kenny Pickett, everyone's like, oh my gosh, it's going up against Buffalo. And then he has all this, the murderer's row and all this stuff. You know what? Go out there, man. No one's expecting you to do anything. Go out and sling it. Like go out and just have fun and just chuck the rock around. And this, there's something about this guy, this quarterback that I don't know. He's got that it factor. That's the way I call it. It's the only way to say it. You can't, there's no stat to look it up, but he's got that it factor. And I think he's going to show up. That doesn't mean they're going to win, but I hope they do. Hey, real quick, before we go to trivia, someone on my Wednesday Let's Ride mailbag asked a really good question, and I wanted to bring it up because we always do the middle names. We were the ones that started that here on our podcast platform. And they brought up, why isn't Minkah get the middle name treatment? I mean, we've done middle names from everybody else, except like Deontay Johnson. We've never done his middle name on the show.
You mean Deontay LaMarcus Johnson?
You know it, but I'm not saying that we've said it. So we've done Christopher Lynn. We knew Benjamin.
It was literally
Todd.
Right on my screen in front of me when I went to try to find
Trent Jordan, Kenneth Shane. That's Kenny Pickett's middle name. What is Minkah's middle name? Do we know?
I can't pronounce it, so I'm not completely sure. I don't know whether Anane. I don't know. It's Anane.
Annane.
Yes.
I think it's Anane.
Anane. I'm not sure.
Brian, go to an autograph signing this summer with Minkah there and ask him, will you please get it on video, and then we'll be able to say it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're screwing up the first name Minkah. Like, Najee yelled at me, and I'm like twice his age. I'm over
He-
twice his age.
He doesn't care. He doesn't care. All right. Enough of that. Let's go to trivia. You both have trivia?
Yes, I do.
All right, Brian, go ahead.
So I'm trying to do my trivia each week on the opposing team and having to do with the Steelers. There's so many things that we can do, but I just love the old guys. And I want to go back to the 70s and 80s. And here's a player that was a number 1 draft pick of the Pittsburgh Steelers who lasted with the Steelers 7 years. He then was traded to the Buffalo Bills and lasted there 6 years, but he doubled his production and went to 1 Pro Bowl in 1981. Who was that number 1 draft pick for the Steelers?
So he went to the Pro Bowl with Buffalo. Is that what
Buffalo
you're
in
saying?
1981.
Okay. First round pick for the Steelers, Pro Bowl. So we've got to be talking about. I think I know it.
Jeff does not, so go for it, Dave.
If I had to guess, oh man, that one's tough. Played for the Steelers. So 7 years for the Steelers, you say?
Yes.
So that means right there, that tells you that no, because who I was thinking can't be right. Because you say they were a Pro Bowler in 81 for Buffalo, right?
Yes.
They were still that my first thought was still with the Steelers in 81. Man, oh man. So it'd have to be before the 74 draft, right?
Yes.
So you're probably because like I was thinking someone like Robin Cole, but no, that wasn't him. That was too soon. Let's see. It's not Franco. Because that was 72. And it's not Terry. So you're looking at either 71 or 73. It's got to be one of those two. So that's either. Do you remember him, Jeff? Who was it? Was Lewis that was drafted before Ham in 71, right? So it has to be either him or it has to be 73. I'm sorry, I'm using my mathematical eliminations. And that was, oh my goodness, I can't even remember 73 because their draft was not very good at all.
Florida State. He was a 4-time.
It was a defensive back, wasn't it? Because they took him in the first 2 rounds. Yeah, is it this guy from 73? Because if it is, I don't remember his name.
The guy from 73 was J.T. Thomas out of Florida State, but it is not. It is Frank Lewis.
So it was okay. Oh, gotcha. Okay.
And he was actually very good. We're number 43 for the Steelers, but that 1974 draft, there were not a lot of balls for him, but he was one of the best pass catchers for that team in that first Super Bowl.
The only reason I remember him, like the name, is because he was the player taken before him, and the round before. So, by the Steelers.
All right, Dave, your trivia. Go for it.
All right, my trivia. I got some of these are easy. I've got a series of trivia questions, and only the way that I can do it. Okay, we're going to start off with the great one. Okay, we're starting off with one. Which great one am I talking about? Am I talking about KP8 or am I talking about BR7? So it doesn't sound the same, does it?
BTR.
BTR. There we go. There's some comparisons because the last pass completion that Ben Roethlisberger threw was to Zach Gentry. The first pass completion that Kenny Pickett threw was to Zach Gentry. Okay. Kenny Pickett has not thrown a touchdown pass yet, but there's been some talk about, those pass catches with Ben Roethlisberger when he first started playing. Do you remember the 3 players who caught Ben Roethlisberger's first 3 touchdowns in order?
Randall L was one.
That was the first one.
I'm going to say Jeremy Tooman? No. Plexico.
It's a little bit easier than that. You got it, Brian?
Hines Ward.
Hines Ward was the second one. And the third one?
Dan Kreider.
Chris McAllister on a 51-yard pick six. So we still don't know who Kenny Pickett's first touchdown pass is going to be to. But we also know that Kenny Pickett has rushed for 2 touchdowns so far. How many games did it take Ben Roethlisberger to rush for until he rushed for 2 touchdowns? How many games did he play until he hit his second rushing touchdown, including playoffs?
I'll say 10.
I'm going to say 7. 7.
Jeff had to decide, was he going over or under the 10? He went on the wrong side. It took Ben Roethlisberger until the 4th game of his second season to rush for his second touchdown. That was 20 games because he played in 16 games his first year, 14 regular season because he didn't play the last week either because they rested him, and the 2 playoff games, and then the 4th game of his second year until he rushed for 2. Kenny Pickett is on pace to rush for, if he plays 10 years, he's going to rush for how many touchdowns? That would be insane.
300 and
something crazy like that. So
actually 340.
Yep. So all right, that's what I got. Someone said 20 some games, and the Sherry Richards said 21. That was pretty close. So good job there.
Sherry Richard also got Frank Lewis, I believe. So
George Testing got Frank Lewis too.
Okay. But George had Frank Lewis ? But I'm still going to give George the good dude, so I'm going to give him credit.
Frank the Tank. That's what they used to call him, I think. That's what I heard back in the day.
Frank the Tank.
All right, so that's it. Brian, let's see your final thoughts. Go for it.
All right. My final thoughts are simple. There is one thing that is driving me absolute bonkers this week, and I'm not going to tell fans how to feel. Definitely not going to do that. But a lot of people were calling for this change for Kenny Pickett. And we are now in an immediate gratification society where everything's got to be perfect right away. Because Kenny Pickett did not produce the win and threw those interceptions in that game, we had a lot of people on the post-game show talking about, well, they should just tank the rest of the year and get a quarterback next year. Haven't even given this guy a chance yet. Let's give this guy a chance. Let's see what he has. He took a team that was just stagnant, and it looked exciting in the second half. I shudder to think what would have happened if Kenny Pickett had 30 more seconds instead of the 9 that he was given at the end of that game. I shudder to think. I think he could have done something, or he would have come awfully close. So this show was about there's no moral victories. There was a moral victory for Kenny Pickett last week because he showed what he can do, and we could look forward to that. Wasn't a victory, and that's fine. And ultimately, he did not produce the win, and that's fine. However, this week, all eyes are on Kenny Pickett. And whether he struggles or he succeeds, there's a lot of upside with KP8.
All right, Dave, final thoughts.
All right, first thing, I do have to give some shout outs. I said I was going to do this because as a part of our one article that Jeff and I do each week, we take turns. It's the Friday Night 6-pack of questions. It's just a discussion article. We ask 6 questions. At least 4 of them are about the Steelers. Some of them could be about anything. I asked a question for one of them. I said, what is your boldest prediction for the game? And whoever has the boldest correct prediction, I would then give them a shout out on the podcast. I picked 2 of them. Some people said, hey, you stole mine. I had to go with the first person to say it. And that was, I think it's Karuna XB70 said Trubisky gets benched at halftime for Pickett. They were not the only one to say it, but they were the first one. But also Steelers since 73 said that George Pickens would have his first 100 plus yard receiving game. So I had to give those shout outs. So If you've never been a part of that article, it is a lot of fun. Just a lot of discussion, a lot of people talking about what they're cooking and eating on a Friday night. Back to everything going forward here. I'm going to tell you something. Some people deal with things in a different way. We all cope with what's going on with the Steelers one way or the other. Some people get really down about it. They get really negative, and that's okay. Some people are just, they have to tune out. They don't even want to watch. We understand. Like Brian said, we hope you don't. Some people, they have to start looking forward to next year. I'm not looking forward to next year. Yes, the Pittsburgh Steelers are going with Kenny Pickett. If the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to finish, and this isn't my prediction or anything, because a lot will change each week. If they're going to finish, 6-7 or 5-12, you would much rather do that with Kenny Pickett getting the experience. You were never going to get to that point with Trubisky and not have Pickett, because you couldn't waste 2 seasons, if you know what I mean. Hit it with a double whammy where you had a down season and you didn't even get to know what was going on with your rookie quarterback, unless it was something due to injury or something like that. But to me, for a lot of people, they want to say, what position do the Steelers need in the draft next year? You can ask me that question all you want. I'm not going there. I'm not going to go there, because so much can change between now and then. I mean, look at it. Last year, the Steelers fans were really worried about cornerback because Ahkello Witherspoon was the biggest trade bust that Kevin Colbert ever made. And by the end of the season, they said, you got to have him back next year. Now they don't know how they feel. There's a lot of things that could happen. A lot of people are like, oh, you need a big defensive lineman. What if Chris Wormley is injured? Isaiah Loudermilk comes in and DeMarvin Leal come on strong. And all of a sudden, by the end of the season, you've got these 2 stud defensive linemen. You don't know what can happen between now and the end of the season. It could also go in the opposite direction. So for those of you that I can't cope with the Steelers not winning, I have to think about 2023, go ahead. But not everybody's ready to do that right now. For one, I'm ready for this ride week in, week out. Even with when the losses come, you know what? Let's see what this team can grow with and try to get better and win the next one. So we'll be here for the post-game show, win, lose, or draw.
Yeah, my final thoughts are simple, and it is take what the season gives you. And I can be honestly say that at least right now the season has given us something to be excited about, and the fact that we get to see what this rookie quarterback can do. I would be depressed, more sad if Mitch Trubisky was still the quarterback, because you just felt like there was no hope. And that's something Brian spoke about earlier. That now that it feels like there's hope, a little bit, a glimmer, that's something, let's cling to it. Let's stick together as a fan base, cheer for the Steelers no matter what. Doesn't mean we can't be critical, but cheer for the Steelers no matter what. And we will be here every step along the way. So, Dave, with that being said, why don't you send us out?
Hey.
See you next week for another Steelers preview.
Everybody else gets a little tight.